Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. We are getting very close to the holiday weekend. Happy holidays. I am here with you, but Chad is back after that weekend. He'll be back next week. First, a bunch of more sad news, I guess. A bunch of just every single day you wake up and you're like, all right, what's today got? Well, we've got a couple different things. First, there was the suspected shooter in one of these cases. The Michael Reynau is the guy's name. He was suspected of being a shooter at one of the rallies. And I guess, I don't even know. I'm still trying to piece together how they figured out that it was this guy so quickly. They say the media did it. They say maybe the internet somehow got us part of the way there. But anyway, he was at one of the Portland protests. He shot and killed somebody. And he was somehow interviewed by Vice magazine. He is now no longer with us. Police went to his place of living to try to arrest him. And I guess there was a shootout that occurred, and Michael Reynau is dead. That happened last night. That these things all occur in such a quick time period sometimes that it's hard to understand. The thing about the Vice interview, though, and I have a little bit of audio from it, and it's weird now knowing what we know about what happens. This was published like 30 minutes before all of this took place. And again, just to remind you, Michael Reynau is the guy that was accused of shooting a Trump supporter, shooting a far-right demonstrator at a Portland protest. And the way in which he speaks about a lot of this, he's also accused of being Antifa, something he had discussed in his interview all, I guess, some time before cops go to his home and wind up in a shootout with him in which he winds up getting shot and killed because, well, he's shooting at police officers. So this is a shootout at his house, which is just surreal to think about. But here is what he's talking about before that, about how he's not really, a murderer and not violent, none of those things, the way that the media portrays it. I think it's valuable. It might seem weird, but I think it's valuable to start by hearing from this man. And then, looking a little bit at the way in which even this is being covered in the news, or it was being covered in the news up until what happened over the last 24 hours. Because it's odd, too, the way in which maybe the headlines were sort of defending this gentleman up until he has a shootout with the police. And now I wonder if it's going to change a bit. But here's part of that audio.
Totally justified. Had I not acted, I am confident that my friend and I'm sure I would have been killed, because I wasn't going to stand there and let something happen. What they've done is they're trying to make it look like we're all terrorists, and they're trying to make me look like a murderer. I've noticed that they keep saying that it's not clear that it's related to the protests. That's a lie. They know that it's related to the protests.
That is the voice of Michael Reynau, an interview that Vice magazine somehow conducted, I think, through freelance individuals sometime before he winds up in a shootout with police, and he was killed during that shootout. It's a surreal 24 hours of events. It's sort of surreal to put into context the fact that, we have multiple different stories going on at the same time in which people on, I guess, one side or another of a political conversation are being described certain ways in the media. It's very odd. This should all transcend politics, right? Like, we shouldn't look at a person who may have shot and killed somebody, may in fact certainly be a murderer. And I only say may because I don't think we've got all the details yet, but there's video and stuff, so it looks incredibly likely that it will be proven that this guy, obviously, if he gets in a shootout with cops too, it kind of insinuates that guilt. I think he even admitted it at some point during that video as well, including what you just heard a second ago. But I want to play as much devil's advocate as I can as far as being respectful of the fact that it hasn't been proven yet in the court of law, which is always important. But as all this has gone on, we should just transcend politics in our reporting of this. Now, I shouldn't care what side of a political aisle a murderer is on. I shouldn't. That shouldn't matter to me. That shouldn't matter to anyone when they write a headline and one headline says something about Kyle Rittenhouse and how he is a member of, all these organizations and whatnot, and you don't necessarily say anything about his potential innocence, even though it is innocent until proven guilty. And then you write a very different story about Michael Reynau and how he is someone accused of or someone who's, innocent until, and those are kind of headlines that exist in the world. and it's confusing to me. But that is yet another way in which to start a show on a serious note, because every single day there's more of this stuff, and it's just, I wonder if it's getting to a point like with you, like with me. There's actually been police officers that get shot and killed in Cleveland too. So I don't know if like you're anything close to where I'm at mentally on all this, but I pray on a daily basis that we find a way to have a conversation that starts to remove all the things that are going on that are not helping the conversation. And these are those things. These horrible, tragic things are not at all aiding anyone, any side of the conversation, in getting us to a place where these sort of things don't need to happen anymore. All right, let's move on. Donald Trump gave a rally. By the way, even just the rally, I guess this pales in comparison, but even just the rally is being covered by some as like a super spreader event as opposed to anything else, which is just, it's strange. That's a little bit odd in the way in which you say something like, you know, here's the president. He's speaking to supporters who chose to show up and see him in Pennsylvania, and we're not even going to refer to it as a presidential rally. We're going to refer to it by other things because we're the media, and we say a lot of things whenever we want to. The stroke story is one of the things that came up actually while the president was speaking, because that is the latest narrative, certainly according to the president, that the media has just made up. It's the latest story that's not at all accurate, but why not? Why not go that road? And the president, as always, at least in my opinion, finds some humor in the ways in which he discusses these things. So let's go to the president on the stroke. He actually tells the beginnings of the story. He gets into it a little further later. So we'll play some of that here.
Oh, it was China. I decided not to see China because they didn't like the way they were doing business, okay? Does that make sense? No, but the new one is, I went for a physical. The doctor said to me, "Sir, would you like to go over to Walter Reed? It's incredible." By the way, the job they do on people that have been just really hurt are heroes. And the job they do is incredible. But "Sir, would you like to go over and do a physical? You have some time." You know why I had time? Some deal. Oh, it was China. I decided not to see China because they didn't like the way they were doing business, okay? Does that make sense? So the doctor, White House doctor, highly respected, Sean Conley. "Sir, would you like to go over and do your physical, do a piece of it or finish it or whatever it was, but do a physical?" I said, "I don't know. I'm not in love with the idea." "Well, if you do it, we don't have to do it. So, okay, let's go. Come on." So we went. And we're driving. Now, you have to understand there are 100 cars. You see what happens here. It's like the plane times 50.
He's pointing to the plane behind him, of course. He's talking about how during a trip the president takes, there's always a press van behind them at some point, knowing his exact location at all times. Anybody from the press can be on that van. Somebody from CNN or wherever can see him go in and out of facilities, can see him go in and out of any place that he decides to visit. So he continues with that story.
So the cars are driving all over. It's about a 20-minute drive. And we get to the hospital. I get out. I was there probably for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then yesterday I read that I had strokes. CNN, fake news CNN right there. I don't know what a mini stroke is, but it's not good. And there could be a day, and I'll admit, I said, hey, it happens to all of us, right? Except these young ones, it's never going to happen to them.
He's joking about potentially someday having a serious health issue because he says it does happen to a lot of people. Listen about that.
And there could be a day, and I'll admit, I said, hey, it happens to all of us, right? Except these young ones, it's never going to happen to them.
And then making fun of some people in the audience. This is the president responding to the idea that he had a stroke and then tried to hide it. This is interesting audio to me because, well, as is the president's kind of main, goal in these press conferences, he goes off book. He talks like a person, certainly at times a funny person, and maybe not necessarily just a president or a presidential candidate, which he is obviously both of. And this is why people support him. It's true. This is why people show up to the rally, because he'll go off book and tell a long story about the stroke gate and why he doesn't understand that the press seems to think that he's hiding one. He did continue with that.
My wife was she came to me, she said, I think I would have known that. I said, yeah, I think they would have known it too, because they drove back with me. The press follows me. They have a special deal, a van. They followed me. And then we go in, we go out. But if you remember last time, I go in, I spend a little time physical like we all have. Hopefully you have them. It's a good thing to have, I guess. As long as they give you a good answer. If they give you a bad answer, don't bother. Possibly too late.
I can't believe he continues to make jokes about the physical.
I come out a couple of hours later, I guess, whatever it is, short time later. I get into the car. The press sees me get into the car. On my way home, I get a call from my wife, the First Lady, who's very popular. Do we like our First Lady?
And then people cheer for his wife, and then continue, Donald.
She's very popular. She's a great person, a great woman. She said, "Darling, are you okay?" I go, "Why do you ask?" She said, "They're reporting that you had a heart attack." Now, you have to understand, I'm driving in a car which is about, 6 cars in front of the press, because they have a big car. There are a lot of them, and we try and give them as little room as possible, make it uncomfortable. But they're right behind me, so they know I got in. And CNN reported that I had a heart attack. That was the same visit, and that didn't work. No, it's unbelievable. CNN reported I had a heart attack, so my wife was concerned. I said, "No, not that I know of. And if I did, I think I'd be back there. No, I'll be home in 15 minutes, darling. Thank you for caring." It's always nice. It's always nice.
He makes a joke about it's always nice that the wife cares.
She sounded relieved. That's good. When your wife sounds relieved. But she said, "I wonder how that happened. Why did they do that?" Because they're fake news.
So I don't know if any of us need to talk about the stroke thing anymore. I know you could say you don't believe the guy, that all that was, what he always does, according to those who dislike him. It's just lies and deceit and everything. But that, to me, sounds like a pretty genuine version of a story, just from anybody who got misportrayed in the media, and certainly from the president getting misportrayed in the media. His wife calling him and being like, "Are you okay? I saw on CNN that you're having a heart attack." I guess if I were the president of the United States, I'd tell Melania, maybe switch the station. Maybe don't listen and don't watch so much CNN. They might not be giving you the most fair information possible. President Trump also talked about the vaccine that may be coming in the near future. I want to play that quick piece of audio as well.
We remain on track to produce a safe and effective vaccine in that record time that we talked about. This would have been years later. It will be delivered before, in my opinion, before the end of the year, but it really might even be delivered before the end of October. How do you like that? Wouldn't that be nice? That would be nice. And you know why? Not because of the election. Be nice because we want to save people. That's why it'd be nice.
That's interesting to me. The way in which this conversation has gone for months now, when the president was giving the coronavirus task force briefings and said that he could have a vaccine ready by the end of this year, has been that it was impossible. Everybody said it. Dr. Anthony Fauci said that it was, too early on in the process to make promises like that. And yet now, this far in, we have everyone, the CDC, Dr. Fauci, and now the president, of course, again, telling you that there is a very strong likelihood that a vaccine will be delivered at the end of October, be available for some in the beginning of November, if it is, I guess, continued to prove to be successful, but it's being mass-produced anyway. Several different candidates are on the hopes of them being available at that time period and being proven to work. And so where's the apology? Where's anyone going? I've even seen social media. I've seen several different reporters cover that comment right there, end of October, as a lie, again, as too crazy of a statement, or even people saying they're concerned that rushing it out this quickly is going to make it ineffective. We don't listen to anyone anymore, because it's not even the president alone saying this. It's not even just one or two medical professionals. It's the CDC. It's Dr. Fauci and or Brad Pitt, depending on who you like portraying that role. No, Brad Pitt hasn't said it himself. I'm just talking about SNL there. But seriously, like, when do we have enough people agree with the president that people go, "All right, fine, he was right about that thing"? Maybe never. With Strokegate, it might be never. But this is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. We got a big show for you today.
Being antisocial sucks. Hang with Chad's friends on Facebook, The Chad Benson Show. And if you just need some alone time, head on over to Twitter at Chad Benson Show. Either way, we can't wait to meet the real you.
This is The Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I saw a story about the president once again discussing how he treated John McCain. I know from reading the tweets from Meghan McCain that she probably, I think, as simply as possible, would like to see this story not come up all that often. She put out on social media. I think it was this morning, actually. I just got through 2 years of my dad a few days ago. The loss is still incredibly painful and raw. No one is more acutely aware of how vile and disgusting Trump has been to my family. It is still hard to understand. America knows who this man is. She continued talking about that. Her husband, though, Ben Domenech, who actually is a publisher for The Federalist, said that he's confident. This is him putting on social media today as well. I'm confident I have better sources within the White House than the writers of these pieces recently that are talking about new, I guess, allegations on how the president might have referred to or talked about the late John McCain. And I expect that upon investigation, his anonymous sources, according to the Atlantic, will live up to the quality that is expected from that organization. So Ben Domenech sort of defending, I guess, the idea that maybe what is being portrayed most recently in the news is not exactly accurate as the private sources are concerned. But, you know, I kind of want to echo Meghan McCain's thought on this. I don't understand the reason to keep going back to this conversation, especially if the family members involved, the husband of the daughter of the man we're discussing here, would like to disagree with you. And I guess the family themselves, very outspoken and very in the news, a valuable and, famous human in her own right, Meghan McCain, would just like the story more than anything else to probably stop coming up. So that's my reaction to that story. I know it's big. I know it's in the news today. I know it's going to get discussed a lot. But I'll just lean on the people who are involved in it, the people who'd be affected by it, and let them tell their story, their version of why this might be a thing that we would just all like to see stop coming up. But it's a blockbuster report, according to several sources in the Atlantic. More conversation about the differences of opinion and then the way in which the president may have treated the late John McCain, which honestly I don't know how much is true or false. It's hurtful for sure for the family involved, and I don't know. It makes no sense. So many things make no sense to me today. It's just that kind of day, I guess, in the world. We have more hair salon updates. That's something I have coming up in just a bit. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Stay with us.
Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in for the day. The president back to campaigning, back to rallying, back to being in front of people, and back to saying a lot of things into the microphone, some of which people probably laugh at, some of which people probably criticize. Same old kind of. And yet I'm so tempted to just continue to play different snippets from that conversation because, he's entertaining. Even if you don't like him, even if you don't like the thing he's saying or the point he's trying to make, he throws the jokes in there more than most people I remember in the world of politics doing so. Case in point would be this conversation that he had about the candidate that he's running against, Joe Biden, and about Joe Biden's love of masks, apparently.
And he famously told a voter, I want you to look in my eyes when he's not wearing the mask, because I've never seen a man that liked a mask. Look, I'm all for it. We have a big weekend, distance on the weekend and all of that stuff, and wear your mask when you close together in particular, and wash your hands, all those things. We have Labor Day weekend coming up. But did you ever see a man that likes a mask as much as him? And then he makes a speech, and he always has it, not always, but a lot of times he has it hanging down, because you know what? It gives him a feeling of security. If I were a psychiatrist, right? No, I'd say this guy's got some big issues hanging down.
This is the president campaigning. He talked about plastic straws for a while. I can play that audio, too, because I found that to be some of the funniest stuff that I don't know. And he got criticized, of course, for taking too much time talking about plastic straws on a campaign, during a campaign event. But come on.
Has anybody ever tried those paper straws? They're not working too good, right? They want to ban straws. I said, well, I've had a couple of meals at McDonald's, etc., over the years, right? Wendy's, friend of mine owns Wendy's. I'll give it a plug, right? Burger King. So they want to ban straws. I said, oh, really? What about the carton? What about the plate? What about the knives and the spoons that are plastic? Oh, they're okay. But the straws we got to ban.
Look, I've said this before. I'll say this again. When the president's done being the president, whether he gets reelected or whatever happens, I guess, I want him to campaign forever. I would like him to campaign for all kinds of things because these are fun. I find this entertaining to talk about, to play, to listen to. I hope you do too, because I honestly, he doesn't have to be a politician anymore. He should just keep talking about stuff. I would go to a rally in which it's all about straws. I'd be fine with that.
Has anybody ever tried? Seriously, the new straw, it's made out of paper, right? It disintegrates as you drink it. If you have a nice tie like this tie, this would have no chance. By the time you get finished, the straw is totally disintegrated. Does anybody walk around with a plastic straw? Because it's not bad. You know, you whip it out, boom, boom. You never had to do that.
As the president on a campaign, stop talking about plastic straws. Let's shift gears to other news. There's other things in the news. The California DA, they have a new policy. They'd like to consider the person's needs in the area before deciding whether or not to try someone for crimes like rioting and looting. That is the announcement recently. Investigators must now consider, was this theft offense substantially motivated by the state of emergency or simply a theft offense which occurred contemporaneously to the declared state of emergency? I don't understand how we could start going down this road of trying to define the need of the individual who broke the law. I don't understand. I can't imagine the challenges that would go into this process. There's a 5 other factors kind of a mission statement sent out of the things that should be done in order to decide whether or not to move forward in trying someone for committing a crime. And then more importantly than anything else, what message does this send to those who might be contemplating doing something in the future? If you find out that certain areas or certain places are okay with crime, depending on how provable your need is, then what happens in these communities? Do you see more potential looting, more potential rioting, more potential violence and destruction in areas because people know that, all right, I'm in the group that gets a free card here. I get a free out of jail one shot like it's playing Monopoly and just see how this is. I can't understand this policy. I guess in some way, if I'm trying to be as fair as possible, to have as much grace provided to those who say things I disagree with, I understand the sentiment, the concept of not trying to, unduly punish someone even more who's struggling, but they just broke the law. They committed a crime, and I don't think the right position by people like a DA whose job is really to do as much as they can to prevent crime or to try people for it. I don't think the position should be, well, sometimes it's going to be okay. There's going to be mitigating circumstances here where somebody who took a thing might maybe be okay with doing that, and we'll decide that as we go, because we'll decide what is substantially motivated by the state of emergency and what is something else. I mean, the people who drove trucks into Chicago to try to take a bunch of things off of the Magnificent Mile shopping area, all the stores that exist there, are we able to go into that and piece through which ones of those? It makes no sense to me to go down roads like this. And yet that's where we are as a society, I guess, or that's at least where California is, in trying to figure out a better path to make sure that they protect some people that have done bad things. I don't know. Moving on even further, let's just get way away from this world because I can't handle it anymore. I love this study. Researchers at the University of Oslo in Norway have figured out that there's so many different pieces of music that if we play, it is impossible not to dance to this music. There are about 75,000 songs over the years about which when you hear one, you just can't help but jam. And now science is backing up the fact that, that's totally not your fault. Even if you don't think you're dancing, your brain is programmed to like music that your body is making tiny movements to a beat. So anything that gets you moving even just a little bit, you tap a finger, anything like that, which apparently music we like, it's impossible for us not to bounce around to it. We're all gonna get the beat. We're all gonna move on, and we're all gonna have a lot of fun. And you can't stop yourself. I love that idea. I love it. I think that that's absolutely true. I find myself all the time doing stuff like that. And every so often then singing a song way too many times and annoying the missus. But come on. I mean, you know that you've had that situation as well. There's a guy who paid... I'm going to do this story, I guess. Let's transition one more time. This one's interesting. There's a private investigator in Australia that provides a very unique service that's been put out on the world. Is out on the internet. He's gone viral for this. His name is Bill Edgar. He lives in Australia, and he offers to tell secrets and settle scores during family events like funerals. He is able to be hired $10,000. He shows up. You give him the details, the information that hasn't been shared with everybody, and he'll do this at any family gathering you want. So obviously there's a bunch of ways to say ruin a Christmas just by bringing this guy along. But this service, which he's been offering for 2 years, has led to 22 different gigs over that time period. He's been to 22 different events. Predominantly, he goes to funerals, though, and he says it's a blend of sitting down with friends and family in the middle of everybody and telling the best friend to sit down and to be quiet while they talk about some things, releasing just any information you need. He's told people about affairs. He's told people about all kinds of stuff, about illegal activity. I mean, this guy is something else. Another time he was hired, he was told to go to a certain instance and tell people about a very sordid history that involved all kinds of things, money, guns, drugs, what have you. And it's just crazy. But Bill, apparently he likes his job. He said he signed up to do more of these. He might even make a TV show or a film. Of course he will. Probably write a tell-all book about it. But he said that, he can fly around. He can come to the United States or anywhere we need him to settle scores and to tell secrets at the family event that you're too weary to do it at. I mean, would you feel comfortable in a situation where it's a complete stranger that walks in and with like maybe a notepad or something and like, hey, I have a bunch of details here that you don't know about. And today of all days, it feels like the right time to tell you, but none of your family members can do it. That's the other thing, is like the family members wouldn't be capable of articulating these words to whoever it is doesn't know them. So you hire a guy in. I don't know if this is a millennial kind of thing. I don't know if you shy away from tough conversations now more than ever because of the society we're in, the world we're in. You let Twitter do it, or you let whoever do. You let Bill show up to your event and do it. But it's just, I don't know. At the same time, I wonder, anybody out there, go ahead and tell us on social media, would you hire the guy? Would you think about, for any reason, you don't have to tell us what the secrets are. That probably won't help you. But would you hire a guy to have a tough conversation with a family member so you don't have to do it? Are we in that place as far as our ability to talk to each other, even to talk to our friends, our family, and our loved ones? Are we in a place where we can't do it? We just, on our own, we're like, no, this is too hard. I lost a bunch of money at this, or I did something that I shouldn't have done, and I can't have that conversation with anyone, so I'm going to hire Bill, going to go home, and then when he's done with his conversation, just pretend it didn't happen. By the way, the number one reaction to this guy showing up at a family event and outing some secrets is whoever the secrets are outed to goes and talks to other people about them, so conversations still happen. If part of this is avoiding conversations, guess what? You're just kind of delaying them, because I can't see everybody, unless Bill just becomes sort of like an attorney going back and forth and negotiating some kind of settlement and all this. I have no idea. But that is a real story. That is a lighter story, at least to me, and one I needed right now, because just continuing to hit on the news of the day all day long can start to be draining for all of us, right? All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in.
Give me a bowl of chili with plenty of peppers.
One Mexican heartburn. Why don't you mugs grow up?
The Chad Benson Show, where independent, a la carte thinkers have a seat at the table and a voice in the dialogue.
I'll have what she's having.
This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. Chad Benson will be back after the holidays. Where are you going for the holiday weekend? Where are you going for Labor Day? A lot of Americans are going to travel. A lot of road trips are going to be taken. There are a couple destinations that have popped up as the most likely to be where you're headed because of the amount of bookings that exist in those areas. Those places, in reverse order: Orlando, Denver, coming in at 3 and 2. And number 1 does not surprise me at all. If you're the kind of person who's probably struggled a lot to deal with all the different stuff that we've all had to collectively deal with this year in different, varieties, you probably want to go somewhere where you don't have to think about anything. You can just have fun. You maybe want to forget the whole weekend. That is Vegas. Las Vegas is the number 1 travel destination for this weekend. That might be normal. That might be average. for a Labor Day weekend. I don't know. But I thought it was tremendously interesting that this year it would be as high up as it is. By the way, just travel to Florida in general has surged 200% in the last few days, last few weeks, or even year over year, which is just not shocking either. If you want a little bit of time away, if you want a break, go to Vegas and have a weekend where, it stays there forever. I get it. I totally understand the idea behind it, and I'm not surprised, but I wonder where you're going. Go ahead and tell us on social media if you're traveling and what you're doing. Other good news, this is definitely good news and pretty cool. Do you remember the 2018 Ice Bucket Challenge? I hope you do. It actually launched in 2015, by the way, but apparently took a little while to get off the ground and go viral. Well, all that ice water, all that social media posting may have turned out to be very, very valuable for the people fighting the actual illness that was awareness was being raised for, ALS. There is now a new promising treatment that was discovered via the funds, I guess, maybe we can kind of say it that way, via the funds that were raised during that viral and global outreach to get more help. The New England Journal of Medicine has reported this, and that is awesome. To think that the Ice Bucket Challenge could have worked, to think that we could all do that again as a society, we can come together, we can use the internet for a valuable reason. The rare disease which affects 20,000 Americans, according to the ALS Association, usually appears during middle age, between the ages of 40 and 70. Life expectancy upon diagnosis is scary, just 2 to 5 years. But all those things may be changing because we all dumped ice water on each other and went to social media and challenged a lot of other people to do it. I mean, come on. If you wanted good news, and there's a bunch, I guess, that we can use this very day. We can talk a lot about the vaccine that's likely to be coming and being talked about a lot. I hope that it's in November. I don't know when it'll be the kind of thing that everybody can use. And I get it. If you don't want a vaccine, that's fine. You do you. Everybody that wants a vaccine, go the other road. And hopefully, eventually, we get this whole thing behind us. But that's promising. The president sounded excited about that while talking in Pennsylvania. I am excited about that. I'm excited about any of this stuff. And now ALS might have a promising treatment discovered because, again, we all went to social media and decided to make each other uncomfortable for a very, very short amount of time for a very, very good cause. We probably need to all do that again. In other news, I saw this story. A hair salon, not the one, there's not Pelosi involved, just some other hair salon, had to take down an ad. They were trying to hire for someone in the UK, and they had to take it down because it was decided there that their ad was excluding people. Now, who was the ad excluding? Well, unhappy people. The ad asked for a happy person to join the small salon team because they needed a friendly stylist to apply ASAP because they were a busy and welcoming environment. And somebody got upset with the ad, said that it was discriminatory, and they were, I guess, proven right. The salon had to apologize and had to take it down because they cannot hire someone who may be happy as opposed to unhappy. That's unfair. You can't do that. You cannot have somebody that smiles at work. You got to be willing to have anybody that's willing to work there capable of applying. This is something else, man. And look, I don't know, if the discrimination aspect to play here was trying to in some way highlight like serious mental illness or anything like that. And that's not the joke of all this. That's not the humor in this. What is the humor in this is that you can't even say the word happy in an ad some places anymore. You can't say that I would like a worker to enjoy the job that they're applying to take and enjoy their time working with us. You have to be willing to be like, I'll take someone who's willing to cut hair, and that's it. I mean, when does the checking stop? When do we stop with everything that we're being asked to? Well, that's got to be more woke. You got to that ad can't be that exclusion. You can't exclude those people. We can't be discriminatory there. We can't do any of this stuff. We've got to be as open, as willing as possible to accept anyone and everyone. And this even goes back to the DA talking about how they might decide who to prosecute, not prosecute for the rioting and the looting in California. I just don't understand. When did it happen? You got to tell me that. We all have to figure out, when did we get to the point where like anything could potentially be acceptable if you say the right amount of words, the right amount of things, to then be like, well, okay, you can't hire a happy haircut person. You can't hire a happy stylist because in that world, you got to potentially accept everybody. I don't get it. Again, to read just the ad itself, this is a busy, friendly, small salon. So please apply a happy, friendly stylist. And that's it. That's what they said. And they got in trouble, the hair salon place, for asking for someone Okay, I'm going to have to take another break in just a second because I can't even process that. I can't process why anyone would get upset by that. Like, what is the idea that someone comes in just not happy at all? They're like, I'd like this job. They don't get the job because they seem, to not want it. And then they say that that's discrimination. This makes no sense. We need to do better at making sense. But hey, at least the internet worked in our favor recently with the ice bucket challenge. So let's do more of that. Let's all just agree that in the rest of 2020, we got to find a way to utilize things well and not do crazy stuff like tell people they can't put a very simple, very common word in a job posting anywhere in the world. I mean, I know this happened in the UK and not here, but still, it's the sort of thing that caught my eye because it's all over the news, at least where I look at the news. This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. A lot more in just a bit.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in, and some things eventually return back to normal. The president on the campaign trail talking about stuff in front of a microphone for a long period of time, some of which you'd expect at a campaign event, some of which you would not necessarily expect. He did mention how he feels that a lot of the closings that exist throughout the country are political and not necessarily motivated by any amount of health information. Here we go.
New York is closed. You're closed. North Carolina's closed. Michigan's closed. All Democrats. And let me tell you what's going to happen on November 4th. They're going to announce their opening. They're doing this for political reasons. They are. Right, John? They're doing it for political reasons because they want our numbers to look as bad as possible going into November 3rd, Election Day. And then as soon as the election's over with, win, lose, or draw for them, they're gonna open it. They got nothing.
Now, a lot of people would say that that's just crap. A lot of people would hear that, think, no way. No, that can't possibly be happening. But then you look at the continued coverage, the continued conversations that come out of all different areas about how, this is bad or that is bad or we need to protect the people by doing this. And then you compare it to stories like this week's Nancy Pelosi fiasco, in which she goes and hits up a salon for a haircut. And you wonder to yourself, how many people that are saying the things that they're saying to me about what isn't safe right now are not necessarily behaving that way because maybe they don't personally believe it. You can't truly take someone at their word if they're doing something else, right? If someone is behaving differently than the words in which they're saying, the actions they're taking, then you got to think to yourself for an extra second, well, wait a minute. Is this entirely because of some data that you're seeing or some information that you're aware of that I'm not aware of? Or could it potentially be accurate? We so often, a lot of people, a lot of media outlets jump to the idea that this is a falsehood, this is not true, this is just an exaggeration. And yet, more often than anybody would like, at least anybody on that side of the aisle would like, things like this wind up being more true than we ever thought. I mean, would you have predicted that someone like Nancy Pelosi would get a haircut at a salon in San Francisco where she's not allowed to do that, where that's not supposed to be a thing that's opened, with all the things she said publicly? The answer, if you thought she was being even a tad honest, would have been no. But to those who can kind of understand that maybe every so often or most of the time, people who turn on the television and see someone saying a thing, they might not truly believe the words that are coming out of their mouth. Here, let's continue with Trump.
And you know what? It's a shame what they're doing. For political reasons, they'll be open. You'll be open on November 4th. But you know what? From your standpoint, it's very close for the election. It's very far. If you have a restaurant, then you can't open your restaurant. You can't open your store. It's a disgrace. And they ought to get together. They ought to do it. These are Democrat governors in all instances, and Democrat mayors.
You tell me if you can figure out the exact truth, the exact lie within that statement, but there are certain places that are closed and certain places that are open, and it seems that places that are closed are more likely to be run by Democrats than by Republicans. That's just a simple fact, even as cases go down in some areas. I also saw this story. There is an op-ed piece in the Washington Post about the worst possible outcome for the election evening, the worst possible scenario, the one that would cost a lot of people all kinds of different things. It is an op-ed written in the Washington Post. I guess I should continue to mention that. But it's interesting to me because it essentially says there's only one scenario in which there will be no violence, no anger, a relatively smooth transition of power is what it actually says. Joe Biden has to win and has to win in a landslide, according to this op-ed piece in the Washington Post, written by a professor from Georgetown University. Anything else is built on a series of war games. This is part of what is essentially the idea. The take is that if it's not a landslide victory for Joe Biden, every other scenario we looked at involved street-level violence and political crisis. We explored the four scenarios. Experts, this is me just quoting from it, most likely a narrow Biden win, a big Biden win with a decisive lead in both the Electoral College and the popular vote, a Trump win, but a large popular vote loss, and then finally a Trump win. And then I guess uncertainty in the election, a la 2000, was another potential one to look at. They didn't actually look that often at a Trump blowout win. But in all of those scenarios, according to them, according to their research, the only possible way that our country moves on safely is if Joe Biden has a landslide win. What are we saying? What are we talking about now that we can go to places like the Washington Post and put out pieces that professors and educators can say, like, yeah, no, it's essentially civil war. And this actually goes back to Michael Raynow, the guy who was accused of shooting someone at a protest, shooting someone that was a member of some right organizations, some counter protesters, essentially Trump supporters who showed up at a rally in Portland. And this guy, Michael Raynow, said, among other things, that he was just defending himself. Video does not seem to support that whatsoever. And I know he's still just accused of this. I know all the facts have not been fully released yet, so I don't want to say with any sort of level of clarity what he did or didn't do. But he was killed in a shootout with cops just last night. So the guy accused of doing something and then winds up shooting at police officers trying to apprehend him in order to continue to investigate the crime that took place earlier this week. The most interesting aspect about this story, outside of just the fact that, you know, it's being covered so strangely by the news in comparison to another story where the person suspected of doing something terrible, suspected of a crime, suspected of shooting individuals, is a supporter of the president, as opposed to this guy, Michael Raynow, who certainly would be the opposite of that. He's almost a happy Antifa member, according to the comments he's made on social media and via video. But the other very strange, very unique aspect of this story is that Vice.com had interviewed him via, I guess, some freelance reporters hours before this shootout with the cops takes place, and hours before this guy winds up getting killed by the cops, well, trying to kill them. Here is what part of that sounded like. Here is his defense of himself and sort of his admitting that he definitely did something at that rally.
Totally justified. Had I not acted, I am confident that my friend and I'm sure I would have been killed, because I wasn't going to stand there and let something happen. What they've done is they're trying to make it look like we're all terrorists, and they're trying to make me look like a murderer. I've noticed that they keep saying that it's not clear that it's related to the protests. That's a lie. They know that it's related to the protests.
So this is an individual trying to defend himself from the perception that some had of the events that took place in which he was accused of shooting and killing someone at a rally, a counter-protester, and then he was killed in a police shootout. How do you not think, if it's just you, if I'm not, accusing him officially doing anything until the courts prove it, although he's admitting it in that audio, but if it's just you, what do you think is the likelihood that this guy was a violent person, that this guy was a human being who had intentions to do bad things, who did do the bad things he was accused of doing, and who wasn't all that sorry about them, and yet the way in which he's portraying himself and the way media sort of portrayed him too and allowed him to be discussed, and even this interview being out with all these defenses of him being a part of the conversation is incredibly different than the story we're getting for another member of the counter protesters that exist in different areas, Kyle Rittenhouse, who is very much discussed utterly differently. And I don't know what will come of that story either. I'm not trying myself to defend or to indict anybody. That's for the court of law to do. That's for all the information that exists to be proven in those places and for us to know the true stories that way. But just the coverage of these two gentlemen has been utterly, utterly different in such a way that should be uncomfortable to so many of us. And yet, I don't know. One other quick thing that I noticed, this was in the New York Post. This is another op-ed. Why Democrats should be worried about mail-in voting. Mail-in voting is having a bigger and a bigger part of the conversation on an almost daily basis now, because there's one truth that we continue to neglect in the mail-in voting conversation. We've never seen it in the size that we're going to see it this year. It has never occurred to the degree that it's about to occur in our country. And when you say just simply that sentence about anything, if you were about to test any process, any procedure, anything for the first time at the scale that they're testing it, look at the vaccine. Look at the conversations we have about the vaccine. There's a story out of Russia that their vaccine might be working, and in small sample sizes might be proven to be effective, might be proven to be safe. And any kind of expert is saying, well, we need more time. We need more of an understanding because this is just a small sample size. Our mail-in voting so far, the history of our country, essentially it's been a small sample size of what we're about to get here in the next few months. And so when people discuss the pros and cons, the risks that may crop up in this whole process, I can't stress enough the accuracy in that. And then you watch the news, you're like, Trump's wrong. The president is lying. Mail-in voting 100% secure. Nothing will go wrong. And then you ask any expert that's ever dealt with it before, 1 in 5 ballots gets thrown out for whatever reason. And you're like, wait a minute, what now? All the states, a large majority of the states, were warned that if their votes don't get there quick enough via the mail, they might not be counted at all. And again, you're like, wait, what's happening? And then finally you hear the news, and it's a very common narrative now that the likelihood of us knowing who the president is the night of the election is tremendously small, probably impossibly small because of the amount of time it's going to take to count all the ballots. And then you add on top of that, what is the fear that, wait a minute, the minute that we at any point know what happened with the in-person voting, we know where the sides are going, we then can actually tabulate via someone counting something in an office somewhere, how many votes somebody needs to win an election or to lose it. I mean, come on. There's a tremendous amount of reasons why people, Democrats, Republicans, everyone should be weary of the process we're being asked to partake in. And I know that what that means right now is attempting as best we can to find solutions to problems as opposed to just talk about problems. And the only solution I can come up with, and I know it's one that not everybody's a fan of because I know that there's a lot of people that are going to say it's not safe, but in-person voting has not been fraught with this amount of question marks, and it is the presidential election. This is the only thing in our country, maybe, that we shouldn't kind of sort of get right. We should get this as right as we absolutely can. And so anyone that's telling you now that, it's crazy to even question this process, it's crazy to think about the potential outcomes, read the op-ed in the New York Post. Read the Why Democrats Should Be Worried About Mail-in Voting op-ed. I'll put it up on some social media pages, maybe the Craig Collins Show page on Facebook or Chad Benson's Facebook pages, because I think it's well written. I think it's a great point. And all it talks about is the unknown that is this, more so than just the different levels of corruption that have taken place. There is a tremendous level of unknown, and we are just a couple months away from having to deal with that unknown and hoping for the best. And that is not a sentence I thought I'd say about our elections in this country. This is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
This is Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I know the answer is yes to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Have you ever read a sentence and then stopped at the end of the sentence and been like, what now? How is this? I know it's the year 2020, so I think we're getting more of these than ever. But here is a sentence. Here's a headline in an article. A seasoned activist and professor of African American history at George Washington University has pretended to be a black woman for years, despite actually being a white woman from Kansas City. That is a sentence to start a story that I now have to read. I can't not read that. And I don't understand sometimes like how a sentence like that is possibly a true thing that happens in the world we live in, but it is. And now to quote from this article and from the interview with the individual who's now, I guess, admitting that she's a white woman and not a black woman, to an escalating degree. This is a quote from her. Over my adult life, I have eschewed my lived experience as a white Jewish child in suburban Kansas City under various assumed identities within a blackness that I had no right to claim. First North African blackness, then U.S. rooted blackness, then Caribbean rooted Bronx blackness. This is a true story, and you're going to see headlines about this. She also went by a different name, and again, she is an educator. She is a professor of African American history at George Washington University. She's a protester. She showed up in activist circles. She spoke in New York back in, I think, earlier this year. It looks like maybe as early as January or June, excuse me. She gave the name Jessica Bombalera while speaking to people. She said a lot of very colorful things during that speech about how horrible it was that the people that lived in the community she was speaking to had taken that neighborhood from her and her people. And she happens to be a white woman who took on the role of a black person, in her opinion, I guess, or whatever she chose to do because it made sense to her. What world do we live in? I don't mean to be repetitive all day today, but again, let me read the sentence at the top, the sentence that I said. I know the answer is yes to this question, but if you ever read something and then just question for a second if you're awake or if you're asleep, a seasoned activist and professor of African American history at George Washington University has pretended to be a black woman for years, despite actually being a white woman from Kansas City. And she's an activist. She's showing up at things. She's getting megaphones. She's yelling at people. If we are ever to question whether or not some of the people involved in any of this stuff are motivated by things other than getting change to happen, certainly when you look at rioting, you look at looting, you look at all the people who are involved in that and that they don't all come from the same community. They aren't all, people who might be affected by the things that they're protesting against, but sometimes just opportunists or Antifa or whoever looking to create violence, looking to stoke all different kinds of other things. You just go back to this story and read it, that there's a person out there in the world who was a big part of the movement and apparently now finally coming clean about the fact that not only is she not a part of that group, but she lied about it for years to differing degrees. I mean, just to quote her again, too, that sentence is also surreal to me, that she said over her adult life, she has eschewed her lived experience as a white Jewish child in suburban Kansas City under various identities, including those as a North African a person of North African heritage. She's been someone who's a U.S. rooted African American, and then someone who is a Caribbean rooted Bronx African American. These are all the things that she's pretended to be over her adult life because I don't know, but she's definitely sorry about it. Does that make it any better? What do you do in this? She should be fired, I assume. She should probably have a lot of things that are, gotten maybe incorrectly gotten unfairly be taken away from her, because how do we live in this world? How do we, we got to make it better. I just want to reference something I talked about earlier in the show. The Ice Bucket Challenge worked, so the world isn't terrible. We helped with ALS, I guess, by dumping ice on each other on social media. So we got to be able to get over all this stuff and get back to a world that makes way more sense. And I read way less sentences like that on the radio anywhere. After the break, which is coming up in just a second, I want to talk about a couple that adopted 4 kids and then wound up finding out they were pregnant with quadruplets. That's an 8-kid swing in a very short amount of time. I wonder how you'd handle it. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. There is good news, at least according to Vice President Mike Pence, that the government won't shut down, which would be just another sort of catastrophic thing to watch happen. Unfortunately, no other agreements were made, but Mike Pence is saying he's telling a few different organizations that the Trump administration and Congress have agreed to temporarily fund the government at current levels to avoid any kind of shutdown. This, at least he's saying, is good news since there's no strings attached, and it will allow negotiators to continue to focus on separate issues. Government funding will lapse if Congress does not pass legislation before the end of this month. So there's still work to be done, which is probably the only sentence that Congress needs right now. There's work to be done. You should put that like Notre Dame does in front of all the different doors you can walk in and out of, and just tap it every time. There's work to be done, and make sure that you guys get that sort of stuff finished so that we actually can move on with our economy and with our world in better ways, and not just all bicker and fight and have the president make executive actions that are then also criticized, even though they're being utilized almost universally now by most of the states as far as unemployment or anything else goes. The president does stuff to help, and nobody cares or talks about it, which is just crazy. I referenced this story a second ago. I really like it, mostly because I think it's touching, but also kind of awesome. A couple in Pennsylvania who has one son decided to adopt 4 siblings back in December. Because, you know, if you're going to adopt, and I guess you find out that there's kids together, I think there's movies on this. Why not adopt them all? So the family, very sweet. They adopt 4 siblings, and then they find out now that, they're pregnant with quadruplets. So that's a substantial swing of children in a very short amount of time. Those babies were born just last month. So the family went from 3 total children to 11 in less than a year. What do you think it's like in that household right now? How do you think it's going? Do you think that there's additional family members who've been brought in for support? I mean, this is cool. They said they wanted more kids. They said they were hoping for more kids. That's why you choose to adopt 4 children. But then, of course, I guess God has another plan, and you wind up with twice as many as expected, giving birth last month. And then the intense coverage, I guess, that's happened now has entertained the family, to say the least. They've said they were talking to their local news there, and just, it's going to be a fun time. There's going to be a movie made about this. You know, all of a sudden, the 8-kid swing or something. I don't know what you want to call it, but this, of course, is going to be a film. And I do want to know what you would do. If you want to reach out to us on our social media pages, if all of a sudden you went from a 3-kid household to an 11-kid household over the course of just a few months, how would that go? I have no children of my own, so I can't really weigh in other than to say I think that as Uncle Craig, when I put that hat on to help with any of my relatives, any of my family, I know that I would not do well in an environment with 11 children. It would not be the best. I would be giving out snacks like crazy to make sure that everybody was happy, and handing screens to individuals, to kids, as much as needed to be. But this is awesome. I think that this will be a lot of fun for them, and certainly the kind of thing you talk about for quite a long time. Most Americans say that during the quarantine, their mental sharpness has gone the wrong way. 2,000 people were asked. 62% of respondents said these days they feel, that everything is kind of too similar, that there's too much of just nothing that's, I guess, what we're used to happening going on, and that's caused us to mentally fade just a bit. Over half of the people polled that they agree that days are moving faster than before because, there's not a lot of anything, and that they always feel tired. The study, which was conducted by one poll on behalf of a couple different organizations, found 6 in 10 respondents are complaining about feeling lethargic throughout every single day while under quarantine. Nearly half of respondents are worried they may not be able to focus now that the quarantine is starting to open, I guess, in certain places. These are all things we don't really think about, right? Like when you go through this whole process, when you have unprecedented things on a daily basis and decisions that we don't really remember having occurred in the past, even though I know like long ago we went through stuff similar to what we're going through now, I guess, but it's been a while. It's just so hard to think how those decisions are going to impact us in all these different ways. And so for people to say that mentally they feel impacted, that physically they feel impacted, that all these ways, I mean, obviously it makes sense now. 46% of respondents say that the key to keeping their mind active during quarantine was simply to read, pick up a book, do something to keep yourself going, do a puzzle maybe. 4 in 10 respondents opted to exercise more, giving them a boost of energy and maybe mental acuity. 37% found that a puzzle, as I said, was valuable, or 31% go with the old crossword, and maybe even take some vitamins. Now, a doctor who's quoted in this said that not all supplements are created equal, by the way. Before starting any routine, it's important to evaluate what your current health needs are with an expert so you can optimize what you'll be taking. Of course, a person that's selling that product. Anyway, 56% of respondents also said that They felt overwhelmed with the amount of health and wellness products that are available to them, so getting a little bit of help. And again, some top activities people can do include watching documentaries at 36% of people. I don't know if that counts all the same as the other ones. Learning a new skill or hobby, 28%. Sudoku, 17% of people just like doing those. And learning a new language, 17%. Say that that's going to keep you mentally focused. But again, these are just some of the things that maybe we neglect to think about when we go through this world in which we're living that is 2020. And I just can't wait for it to be over. I would like to see 2021 here ASAP. Taco Bell is still going to be removing the Mexican pizza, and people are not happy about it. I have never had a Mexican pizza from a Taco Bell. I am married to a woman who was born in Mexico and now is a proud U.S. citizen, and she tells me all the time that Taco Bell is not exactly authentic Mexican food. So when I see the words Mexican pizza and that people love this thing, I need to know more. There's so much more information is needed. They say the packaging has a huge environmental impact, and Mexican pizzas alone use more than 7 million pounds of paper board per year. So that's the biggest reason, not because of the selling of it, but because of the waste. On November 5th, the Mexican pizza is going away. Thank God they chose after the election. I would say that too. Otherwise, you might see the president start to tweet about how this is somehow connected to him. Fans are not happy. The angry tweets were flying all day on the social medias, on the Twitter, everywhere that you can get it. Just when you think 2020 can't get any worse, it gets worse. That is a real tweet from a fan who's upset, comparing the loss of Mexican pizza to all the other things that might exist in the world. Another person said, just heard the awful news. Starting November 5th, Taco Bell is getting rid of Mexican pizza. I love the fact that this is causing a lot of reactions because I think, and I'm not to judge, maybe it's delicious. I like Taco Bell. If you hit Taco Bell late at night, it seems like the perfect food for some reason. Better than if you do it during the day. If you swing by there at, say, the late night moments, they can be a heck of a move. But apparently it's a fan favorite. And that's fine. Let's focus our rage there. Let's all focus our rage on things where it's going to be a little bit easier to fix because they can bring that Mexican pizza right on back if enough people get very mad. And maybe that helps us somehow get, a little sense of a relief. I don't know what it would be, but that's just something else to me. Also, I saw this story, which I thought was very interesting. And maybe in places where this is legal, not the end of the world if it did happen, although I'm not exactly advocating. There is a mystery going on where people are finding these packages in different areas, these little baggies of weed just dropped throughout cities. And there's some sort of drone that might be doing this throughout Tel Aviv, just dropping little baggies out into the world with a little note on them that says something to the effect of, hey, if you're struggling, try this out. That's not good. There's a lot of reasons that I'm going to say it's not good. But at the same time, I guess some people are at least amused by it. The generosity comes at a cost. 2 people in their 30s said they were arrested after they picked up one of these bags and held onto it for a bit and found out that it wasn't legal to have it where they were. You might think that police are reprimanding those who are trying to distribute these via what are being called green drones, but I guess it's kind of hard to locate those people. There's some companies that might even be involved, said that they're thinking outside the box as far as raising awareness to things like cannabis. I don't know if just droning a city with little bags of weed, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. I do see how in 2020 someone could come up with that idea, though. I got to be honest. I'm trying to be as fair on both sides of this as I can. But if you're brainstorming concepts for how to reach the public, if you're a company, if you're whoever, in this year, this very specific year, and someone in a board meeting goes, hey, what if we just, dropped marijuana on cities? Well, it's not a terrible idea because it is 2020, sir. I mean, I do see some companies reacting that way. I see others telling them that's probably a crime, depending on where you're doing it. That doesn't make sense to us. But I can see some saying, you know what? We're open to it because we can't really think of anything better to make this year feel any different. So you tell us. Keep going to social media. I'm just going to keep pointing you there. Do you think that we're at a point this year where if you were working for a company and it were legal in the area you're talking about it, someone may throw out an idea and you wouldn't necessarily dismiss it offhand to just go ahead and blanket, maybe not necessarily weed. Maybe we can be a little less controversial here. Maybe, I don't know, a 6-pack, whatever you need it to be. But and maybe that could even be a campaign somebody runs on. Maybe we get to the point where someone in a political space somewhere is saying, if I win, I will drone this city with some kind of reward for the fact that we all made it through 2020. Something appropriate. Maybe not, again, the marijuana, but that's just them. And I'm not exactly judging, am I? All right, I got to take a break. This is the Chad Benson Show. Greg Collins filling in.
Chad Benson Show, where we reach across the aisle and occasionally poke someone in the eye.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Operation Legend has arrested over 2,000 people, 147 murder suspects in just about 6 weeks. According to the Chicago ABC affiliate there, they have done this through all kinds of different things. They've taken every opportunity to make an arrest. That includes parking violations. It includes finding violent criminals, pretty much any way you interact with them, and then being people in the area at the right time, I guess the right agents, in order to get things like that done. So Operation Legend, something that is criticized often, has resulted in 2,000 arrests in the course of just 6 weeks and 147 murder suspects being apprehended. Do we continue with the no attaboys, or do we start throwing a few little attaboys around, maybe to say good job to those working in areas like this, to those helping clean up certain things? In Chicago, 72 people have been charged with firearm-related federal offenses in just 6 weeks. A remarkable effort, and by far the highest in any city in Operation Legend, and obviously something that Chicago is very much in need of cleaning up. In Kansas City, where the program began after the killing of a 4-year-old, 60 people have been charged with firearm-related offenses. Although the overall number of federal prosecutions is close to that, there is a lot going on, and apparently Operation Legend, way more successful than any of the news organizations would have you believe. All right, let's shift gears to something that maybe would be a great escape for so many of us to experience. This has gone viral. There is a hotel. Actually, I was talking about a hotel, a whiskey hotel that's going to open in California in the next couple of years. This is open right now. You can experience this now. It does cost about $10,000. I just need to warn you. But it says, do you want to live like a Japanese warlord for a weekend? Because you can. The first ever Castle Hotel has opened in the area, and it comes with a bunch of little extra benefits for that $10,000 price tag. Up to 6 people can stay in a 4-story wooden frame structure that was built in 1331 and was home to several different lords for 250 years, beginning in the 17th century. It was restored in 2004 and can now be yours for the low, low price of $10,000 a weekend. Though costly, the experience would be like nothing else you've ever seen. It includes a performance at the start, which I'll get into in a second. They call it the welcoming ceremony.
Because there's gotten gate.
Moon watching with sake. You have after hour access to the entirety of the castle. And this does sound like the kind of thing, if you have that extra money to splurge on, maybe would make you feel quite a bit different about the year. But the performance itself feels worth it, although there is an encouragement to go ahead and dress up, which I don't think that I'd partake in. But hey, you do you. Dress as someone who might have been a warlord back in Japan. You walk into this giant castle, and a guy on horseback approaches you while gunshots are firing off. He's waving flags and blowing into a conch shell. That's the real way, I guess, because you booked this probably online. There's no regular check-in at the door, although it would be awesome if you had to check in with someone, and then as soon as that process is done, they give the old thumbs up to the guy on the horse who rides in blowing a... I love it. This is, I guess, weird, but this is me. Guests can join the fun by dressing up, as it says. After that ceremony in which historically accurate samurais welcome you via a performance, you are then escorted throughout the temple and introduced to several different areas as the lords of the castle for the weekend. There is a theater for other performances. There's a certain amount of demonstrations that might happen over the course of the weekend, and also how much you throw down. But the Ozu Castle is limiting its stay to just 30 groups for 30 nights. You can have up to 6 people go, and you get the works as far as just a way in which you go and pretend that, life's a lot more normal, or actually, I guess, a lot less normal in this instance. Although I do wonder, you have to say it, I guess it needs to be said, how much of this is done with, things like masks or social distancing being a part of it, because that would take away. That would take away from it, from the historically accurate knights, the historically accurate guy on horseback blowing into a conch shell, if they're also wearing all the masks and doing all the social distancing thing, and maybe every so often, popping out the Purell and just cleaning up the hands. That would take me out of the moment. I'm just saying. I'm not telling you to risk anything there in Japan, but I'm just saying that it might be interesting. I touched on this very briefly, but I want to go back to it for a second. Obviously, back in August, the Kremlin decided they were just going to put a vaccine out to its people. This is the Sputnik V, Sputnik 5. It was mass-produced. It was distributed. It's out in the world. And I know that a lot of medical people had very real concerns about the fact that Russia was kind of sort of just testing its population via this Sputnik thing, and not necessarily doing it the way that maybe other health organizations would try to do it. And yet the early results are promising. And I think this is good news. And I'm not trying to give too much credit to a country like Russia. I'm just saying that if there is any place in the world that's having both a demonstration of valuable antibodies being produced and also no adverse side effects being reported, granted, according to a lot of experts, in a very small sample size of data. And also there is several mentions in this article I'm reading about how data in countries like Russia cannot necessarily be trusted. But these different pieces of information, which have been published in medical journals now as well, are very promising signs that there may be several different valid and useful things, useful solutions, vaccine solutions coming to more parts of the world later on this year. And I guess in part due to the fact that Russia as a country was willing to go ahead and take steps much quicker than the rest of us. And you're hearing in our own country the amount of criticism that the president is getting for potentially rushing a vaccine onto the market that might cause just havoc and damaging results. And yet if we do have data after months of stuff like this happening in other countries, or at least happening in one other country, I can't understand how that doesn't aid in our understanding of what is and isn't useful to us. And so at the very least, while discussing a story like this and discussing these early outcomes and knowing that we're 2 months away from any sort of mentioned deadline, any sort of mentioned early expectation by the president or any members of the CDC or anywhere else, we start to feel more and more like, hey, maybe there is another side to all this. And by the way, I think I'm just going to have a whole party at some point. I don't know if it'll be on a radio station or just somewhere in the country. When we do finally have an availability to all get back together to get through all of this, it's going to be a party. I'm throwing the biggest party ever. I'm not actually saying you're all invited because I don't think I can house that many. But it would be fun, right? It would be a good time to finally get past this. And at least in those instances, you then have to say some of the factual things, whether we like them or not, that might be a part of the reason for this solution, which would be the amount of red tape that got removed in our country to allow testing, to allow things like production to happen quicker than they usually would. That expediting is valuable, and things like studies from other countries, even ones like Russia, who may have pushed this on their population before we were willing to do it, may wind up breeding, thank God, very successful, very accurate, very helpful results that get us into a very different world. All right, there is so much more to talk about. This is the Chad Benson Show. I am Craig Collins filling in.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. President Trump back to rallying, back to campaigning, back to talking to people, back to talking to crowds. He goes off book whenever he does that. Case in point is a couple of comments he made, one of which I think deserves more support than it ever gets, although he does utilize it as a little bit of a joke that he does have to get reelected for it to happen. When he talks about the healthcare transparency idea, in which hospitals, like anybody else, had to put all their prices on the internet, had to put all their prices, maybe like a menu. You walk in and you see all the prices the same way you do at any sort of restaurant, and then you can kind of figure out where the best place to go is, or maybe even negotiate those prices down. He talked about that on the campaign trail, and honestly, it is an idea that deserves a lot more recognition and a lot more conversation, because I don't know why it doesn't happen.
I said to my people the other day, when is price transparency? This is going to lower your prices by 50%. You'll be able to negotiate. You'll be able to do things you're not even allowed to do now with hospitals, with doctors. You get better doctors. You get lower prices. I said, when does it start? And it's a complicated. I was fought. You have no idea. Right, fellas? You were fought too. But they fought me on this. Price transparency, it's bigger than healthcare. Could be bigger than healthcare. But I said, when does it start? They said, sir, we have it all set. When? January 1st. I said, I better win this election.
Okay, it can't be bigger than healthcare. Let's pump the brakes a tad on that because it's part of healthcare. But yeah, it would be tremendously valuable to be able to know what the prices of things are before you go to any sort of place and get something done. And I get it that hospitals are utilized in cases of emergency, and I can't see a family member of mine doing price checking while trying to drive me into an emergency room for any sort of serious thing I need treated right away. But there's a lot of situations where it would not be a bad idea to be able to, before, just like any other kind of business, even like the dental office or anything, before anything is taking place, be told what the pricing is going to be. Also, the conversation about H1N1 came up during the rally.
No, but for another president, especially, in the last administration, they had the H1N1 pandemic. It was called swine flu. Joe always calls it the N1H1. He gets it mixed up. No, it's the H1N1, Joe. Not that it matters, I guess. No, do you ever notice? He's always calling it the other. He calls it the opposite. He has no clue where he is.
Okay, come on. I mean, even if it's not true, even if you're going to get mad at it, the President of the United States just said that the opponent, doesn't have any idea where he is in response to him saying N1H1. Come on, you gotta laugh a little bit. That's got to cause a smile, at least a little one.
But he keeps saying, if he was... Well, he didn't want to ban China, and we saved hundreds of thousands of lives by banning China. I was the only one that wanted to do it, actually. And then we banned Europe, because I saw what was happening in Italy and Spain and France. And we banned Europe. We saved hundreds of thousands. And if I didn't do the closing and the opening, so we're at 175,000, far too... Look, one is too much, because this was given to us by China, and it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. They could have stopped it. They stopped it from going into China, but not going to the rest of the world, including our country. It's a disgrace. But think of it. Joe Biden got the worst marks you've ever seen for his handling of the H1N1 swine flu. They said it was incompetent. And the head guy, who now he's trying to retract, it's a little tough. That's one great thing about the tape. He said it was horrible. He said we did a horrible job. He said they got lucky. It's not contagious like this. This is a tough one. I can look at that guy, he'll catch it right there, and he's very far away from me. It's a tough one because it's so contagious.
It is. It is accurate to say that the R number, or the availability to transmit this from one person to several other people, is higher than anything else we've seen, higher than the flu, higher than a lot of others, including, of course, H1N1. So that is accurate, the statement at the end. It's funny that he made a little bit of a joke about how easy it would be for him to give it to one of the people at the rally if anybody had it, because, well, that is a criticism of the fact that the rally exists, that it could be a super spreader moment. But while discussing this, he throws in some valid points that are not often brought up in mainstream media as much as they should be, which is the things that he did to prevent maybe more spread of coronavirus into our area early on by banning the travel with China, something that absolutely he was criticized for. And odd that whenever you hear, every time you will continue to hear it as this election really truly gets underway, that everything the president did, every decision he made, put lives in jeopardy, caused us to lose lives, and caused this to be as bad of an outbreak as it currently is right now. You almost always neglect to mention the fact that he banned travel much, much earlier than anyone was okay with, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, including everyone that was still trying to get an understanding as to what the virus was. He made that decision, and that decision did absolutely benefit our country as far as the spread of this virus goes. It is not, and I know that as I talk about the president on the show, there's a lot of people out there like, wow, this guy just loves Trump. He loves everything he says, everything he does. No, there's no way I think that anyone truly 100% and all the time. Well, okay, some people love everything he does and says, because a lot of it is stuff we've never really heard a politician be willing to say before, willing to do before. And there are some situations where previous people in positions like his have been in trouble for some of the controversies that have seemed to not matter to him. But that is the reason why he is a transition as far as the things that will change in politics because of his election to begin with, and maybe his re-election. But certainly he is someone that has changed a lot of our opinions as to how some things work, like media, like the way in which media describes pretty much anything. He has shined a light on those areas, and you got to give the guy credit where credit is due. He also talked, of course, about Strokegate, which is what I'm calling it, The fact that a lot of people thought that he had a secret mini stroke while checking into Walter Reed. He gave us a very detailed explanation of that, several minutes long. Let's hear a bit of that.
My wife was like, she came to me, she said, I think I would have known that. I said, yeah, I think they would have known it too, because they drove back with me. You know, the press follows me. They have a special deal, a van. They followed me. And then we go in, we go out. But if you remember last time, I go in, I spend a little time physical, like we all have. Hopefully you have them. Good thing to have, I guess. As long as they give you a good answer. If they give you a bad answer, don't bother.
The asides, man. The asides of Donald Trump.
Possibly too late. But I go in, I come out a couple of hours later, I guess, whatever it is, short time later. I get into the car. The press sees me get into the car. On my way home, I get a call from my wife, the First Lady, who's very popular. Do we like our First Lady?
Applause will continue for a while. I will jump ahead, but people apparently do like the First Lady.
She's very popular. She's a great person, a great woman. She said, darling, are you okay? I go, why do you ask? She said, they're reporting that you had a heart attack.
Let's be honest for a quick second. If that is exactly the way it happened, I do feel bad for Melania Trump that she pops on the TV. She's like, my husband had a heart attack. When did this happen? And she's got to call the president, who's in the middle of a motorcade transporting him back to the White House, and obviously press behind him, and just confused by this. And if you wonder why there's an adversarial relationship between the president of the United States and the media, if this story is accurate, which I know a lot of people will say maybe liberties have been taken, and I'm not going to tell you 100% for sure you're wrong, this would be a good reason to dislike parts of the media.
Now, you have to understand, I'm driving in a car which is about, 6 cars in front of the press, because they have a big car. There are a lot of them, and we try and give them as little room as possible, make it uncomfortable. But they're right behind me, so they know I got in. And CNN reported that I had a heart attack. That was the same visit, and that didn't work. No, it's unbelievable. CNN reported I had a heart attack, so my wife was concerned. I said, no, not that I know of. And if I did, I think I'd be back there. No, I'll be home in 15 minutes, darling. Thank you for caring. It's always nice.
I love the end of this, too.
She sounded relieved. That's good. When your wife sounds relieved. But she said, I wonder how that happened. Why did they do that? Because they're fake news.
Look, I know that that's his version of events here, and I know that a whole bunch of people on Twitter would like to think that that's all a load of crap, and the guy really had many heart attacks, and he really had little strokes, and, he almost died. I just don't... This whole world, the whole way in which we discuss everything, the whole asking of Pence if he was prepared, if he was ready, if he was warned that things would happen, and the fact that it's probably going to continue to be part of the conversation. I mean, what are you thinking will happen in the debates? In all honesty, if we do get to the debate at the end of September, which I still hope we get to, I know they've been announced. I know that Chris Wallace has got the first one, but I am just curious what you think the talking points will be and how they'll go. Because I know some people said that the president won't be able to attack Biden the way that he attacked Hillary, so those talking points are going to change. Obviously, there's going to be a tremendous amount of conversation about the response to coronavirus and the world in which we're currently living. But it's just going to be a back and forth conversation that'll probably be unlike any other. And I don't know how much of it will make sense because I'm curious at times to whether or not Joe Biden will be capable of handling himself in those kind of situations. And we will see. Although I do also love the idea that the president has thrown out that maybe a drug test is valuable too. One last thing, because I did really enjoy a lot of having the president back in rally form. He talked about straws, about paper straws, about plastic straws. He was made fun of on social media for caring as much as he does about this, but he does make some valid points. Not that I don't know if he needed this platform to do it as far as straws go. You think he just goes into stand-up comedy after he's done with this? Or as I said, just continue to hold rallies for all kinds of things? The Mexican pizza from Taco Bell is right now being dropped from the menu. I'd like the president to have some thoughts about it. I'd love to hear why that's a mistake, like the Twitter world seems to think it is. But here's the straw conversation.
Has anybody ever tried those paper straws? They're not working too good, right? They want to ban straws. I said, well, I've had a couple of meals at McDonald's, etc. over the years, right? Wendy's, a friend of mine owns Wendy's. I'll give it a plug, right? Burger King. So they want to ban straws. I said, oh, really? What about the carton? What about the plate? What about the knives and the spoons that are plastic? Oh, they're okay. But the straws we got to ban. Has anybody ever tried? Seriously, the new straw, it's made out of paper, right? It disintegrates as you drink it. If you have a nice tie like this tie, this would have no chance.
All right. Did I assume that a presidential rally, a sitting president who's running for re-election would do a 30, 40-second chat about straws and be worried about the damage done to his tie? No, I did not assume that that would be a thing that would happen. But darn it, doesn't it lighten up a political conversation just a bit? Wouldn't the straw controversy be more fun to debate than some of the other things that we currently have to debate? By the way, I do have to take a break. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. After the break, I'm going to update you on the chicken wing guy, who I know you've heard the audio. I played it a ton of times myself, but I know it's been all over the place. Buffalo Wild Wings has responded. Let's see if this guy from Nebraska, who desperately wants the name Boneless Wings to be removed from society, let's see if Buffalo Wild Wings and Wingstop are going to back him up on that after this.
I can't take it anymore!
Well, get over it. It's time to forge a new path with your very own political cartographer, Chad.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad is back after the holiday weekend. I hope you do celebrate responsibly, celebrate in a fun way, and not as crazy as some guys who celebrated a little early that I'll get to in a second. I guess I'll do a naked news segment. I got a couple stories that involve just a little bit of inappropriate nudity. But before we get to that, we have to revisit one of my favorite stories of 2020 so far, Chicken Wing Guy, as I'm calling him. He is a guy out of Lincoln, Nebraska, who has a passion that not many share, but he certainly articulates his passion well. Here is him talking to his local city council, which I know you've heard this audio, and I've played it a bunch, but I can't help it. Got to play it again.
Lincoln has the opportunity to be a social leader in this country. We have been casually ignoring a problem that has gotten so out of control that our children are throwing around names and words without even understanding their true meaning and treating things as though they're normal. I go into nice family restaurants and I see people throwing this name around and pretending as though everything is just fine. I'm talking about boneless chicken wings. I propose that we as a city remove the...
Sir.
Excuse me, I'm trying to...
Yeah. Come on, dude. Please.
I propose that we rename boneless wings in the city of Lincoln. We can call them Buffalo-style chicken tenders. We can call them wet tenders. We can call them saucy nugs or trash. We can take these steps and show the...
I can't help it. This guy is the best guy ever.
Buffalo-style chicken tenders. We can call them wet tenders. We can call them saucy nugs or trash. We can take these steps and show the country that where we stand and that we understand that we've been living a lie for far too long.
We have. By the way, his dad is on that city council. I don't know if the dad's proud of his kid for the impassioned speech he made, but it has caused quite a reaction all over the place. Now, some big sellers of the buffalo chicken wing and the boneless wing are getting involved. Buffalo Wild Wings has responded in a couple different ways. They gave an interview to Fox News where they said that they disagreed with the sentiments expressed by this individual. Then they went on to say, actually, we serve boneless wings. Our guests love them and we love them. This is all in something they put on social media. So while we disagree with Ander on his mission, we respect his passion for chicken. So we're giving him a free year of traditional wings, not boneless. It would have been funnier to go the other way. He gets the wing in wing from a Buffalo Wild Wings for a year. That's a reward that I hope he wants, because he did say that he thinks they're delicious. They also said, though, and this is my favorite part, Buffalo Wild Wings trolling in the best way ever. We're also going to donate $1 for every boneless wing sold on Labor Day in Lincoln, Nebraska to the local Boys and Girls Club. Every wing that gets sold in that area that is of the boneless variety, hopefully while someone orders it as trash from the menu. Can I get a set of your trash there? They're going to give money to charity to the Boys and Girls Clubs. That is fantastic. There is a notable holdout, though, as mentioned in this article. Wingstop, another big purveyor of the boneless wing, has refused to do much as far as responding. They said that they jokingly were willing to fight the guy on their Twitter page. But other than that, after reaching out to representatives, there has been not many additional comments. And then Christensen, he did want to clarify at least one thing. In the end, I don't want saucy nugs to be removed from any restaurant menus. This is him quoting. I'm quoting him as he's getting caught up with a local news organization. I just want their name to be changed. They aren't wings. I'll go wherever needed to get this change done. Let him speak in front of Congress. Let's let Pelosi and everybody else grill this guy as far as what his feelings are about the nugs, the saucy nugs or the trash that he'd like to see added to the menus.
We can take these steps and show the country that where we stand and that we understand that we've been living a lie for far too long. And we know it because we feel it in our bones.
And then a little bit of applause. That guy is fantastic. All right, I said I was going to get to some naked news. I think I have almost no time to talk about naked news, but there are some stories of people that are getting unruly, people that are getting thrown out of places like in Minnesota, some travel areas that don't often see this. A group of about 6 guys. It was actually originally reported to be just one woman, but they had to do that story because they got it a little bit wrong. It wasn't one lady. It was 6 dudes. I have more of that information and so much more. Happy almost holiday. Greg Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I am going to start off with a bit of, naked news, because that's where I'm going right now. Part of the reason that I want to go here, as my producer pointed out very aptly, is that this is another example of the media, of the news organizations, of journalists of the world, just being bad at their job, getting stuff wrong. It was reported earlier this week that an unruly naked woman was thrown out of a wilderness area in Minnesota, Lake One. It's part of the Boundary Waters Canoe area wilderness. She was thrown out because she was being unruly. She was naked and she was going to do some edibles later on in the day. It turns out it was not one female individual who was doing those things, but 6 guys, which I don't know how you get those things confused, as Phil also pointed out. That is a great point. I don't know as a journalist how you missed the boat on whether or not it is one woman doing things in the nude, or whether it's 6 dudes. Officials refused to give additional comments, as they said that this is still under investigation, and it happened just the last week. They also did mention in this report that it is highly unlikely for people to be removed from this area, the BWCAW, because they don't usually see this much kind of action, and because it's a very large area in which people can be both safe, have a lot of fun over the summer, and be quite separated from other individuals. But I guess these guys, might have been very drunk, might have been annoying other campers, and had forgotten to wear any and all forms of clothing. But I think that's a really great take on it, more than any other one, that the status of our journalists is at an all-time low when one report is that it's a female, and the actual truth is that it's 6 guys who are doing this kind of thing. Also, and this is, again, just, I guess, leaning into this type of story. So I guess the adult warning has been missed right now. But I saw out of Canada that their chief medical officer had some notes for people who may become, let's say, intimate in these days, I guess, until we get through the rest of the pandemic that is COVID-19. Dr. Theresa Tam stated that if you're going to risk, I guess, that with someone that you don't live with, someone in a situation that, you can't be totally sure if they're healthy or not, even if they've been tested, all that kind of stuff for COVID-19 specifically. You should wear a mask the entire time you're being intimate. That's right. She cautioned against things like kissing, and she said that it would make sense if you were to stay mask on for the entirety of your hangout session, your Netflix and chill, whatever you want to call it. That is a weird piece of advice. Let's just say it that way. And I know as I hit this topic that some people somewhere are like, oh, this is uncomfortable. We don't want to necessarily talk about this, but it is, a health thing, I guess. It's a topic, but also just come on. I mean, to put this out as an actual piece of advocated for, the country of Canada is telling them, their chief medical officer is telling their people that if you want to be romantic, if you want to, I guess have some of your dates end a certain way, you should not take your mask off during the entirety. That is the headline that I never expected to see, one of another set of them that I keep saying all the time, but that do exist in the year that is 2020. Chief Medical Officer of Canada recommends you to keep your mask on through all portions of your date. That is the kind of thing that I guess you just don't see every day. Also in the news, you don't see a lot, although I guess it's one of the problems with the people learning from home out of Texas. A mom of a 14-year-old had to explain to her high school, had to explain to her son's high school, I guess, why a vulgar image popped up during the session that he was in. I guess he was in some sort of band class, and for 10 seconds, the entire classroom saw something they shouldn't have seen on his brother's laptop. Even the members of the family for this poor woman also wound up seeing this image, I guess. They were two other kids, a 9 and 10-year-old daughter, who all had a lot of questions afterward. But it is an example, according to this article, of Zoom bombing, something that is becoming a modern phenomenon as we have more and more kids learning from home, more and more kids learning in school, or not in school, and things like this being a potential problem. The child who was involved, the child who was on the call, is a 14-year-old kid out of Texas. And so, not making any accusations whatsoever, but Zoom bombing as the potential solution here is probably a very valuable excuse for anyone, maybe someone a little bit older, who might not necessarily be telling 100% the truth in those situations. At least the Zoom bombing is potentially one example of how, I just don't know. I have no idea how that got there either. We're all very confused, and it's a shame because I think that that's some sort of hacker. Anyway, moving on to other things, I thought this story was quite amusing, actually. There is a group of flat earth people. They're all on social media. They all hang out together, I guess, that very much wanted to travel to the end of the earth, somewhere in the Antarctica area, where they expect to just see a giant wall of ice earlier this year. But obviously their plans got changed because, coronavirus happened, so the group could not travel the way they had hoped to do it. But a couple that's a part of this group decided, screw it, we're going anyway. The couple who hail from Italy, they sold their car, they bought a boat ticket in order to get part of the way. They've then been making their way as far as they can across the country, across the world, to get to their assumed end of the world, end of the earth. And sadly, though, they have now been stuck. They got stuck in quarantine trying to get the whole way there, and they're complaining about it quite often. They feel like this is all just a conspiracy. It's cover-up. Some health minister and some organization is stopping them from getting the rest of the way. That is, to me, a fairly funny story, and I apologize, I guess, if you're at all offended by the idea that I would find a little bit of humor in two flat earthers not being able to finish their voyage to figure out whether or not our earth is actually flat and not round, because darn it, quarantine got them. And I hope that someday they get out so they can get to the last part of this trip and make sure to find that flat giant wall of ice that they assume does exist. The unsuccessful mission is a huge setback for the flat earthers. I'm sorry. That's what it says in this article. As they're talking about it on social media, they're like, man, this is terrible. The couple went out there to prove it to the world, and they can't seem to get back. So I don't know. I don't know how we get over this until yet another reason we need to fix all the problems we have right now so these poor people can figure out whether or not they're right about their assumption, the same one that we have had a long, long time ago in the history of our world, that the earth is flat and not round. I want them to know. I want them to find that solution for all of us. And then in other news, and I'm surprised this kind of went viral, but maybe not, the fact that LA really discussed what kind of new streetlights they wanted to put up. The winning design is the first huge revamp of streetlights since the 1950s. Is this something that was seriously on everybody's minds? Was there a lot of concern about the exact look of the streetlight? I know in the article, and I'm not taking a shot at the woman who was, asked this question, who wanted to have a lot of debate about it and wanted to have a really great, she calls it the furniture of the city look to things. I get it. I can understand to that a certain extent. But is this uniquely a story for this year, that there'd be a lot of interest in what the street lights look like in any area, that you'd actually send in a bunch of examples and ideas and have a debate and talk about it and then celebrate it when the decision is finally made? Because it's a street light. That's just me. Maybe I'm alone. Maybe this is the minority opinion that I'm throwing out there. But I think that this is a product of the year in which we live and not necessarily the amount of interest people would normally have in this kind of thing. But 400 different designs were selected, were whittled down to. There were more than 220,000 streetlights that are going to be changed, I guess. So it's a big undertaking. But again, this is a story that I saw in national news about the look of a streetlight in a big city in our country. And I just wonder, is that a byproduct of 2020 or is that a byproduct of something else? And then just, I guess, to go back to it, whether or not journalists can report on this correctly, or if they think it's a naked man or six naked women or some kind of thing, because they can't seem to get those stories right. So maybe this, what I'm looking at, isn't even the right streetlight design. I have no idea. This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in, getting silly right before the holiday.
No need to fear. We promise we won't give you a noogie and make you cry Russia, Russia, Russia.
Who is the fearless leader?
Fooey.
Fui, fui, and double fui.
What is your language? This is a family show, remember?
Fui to families too.
Nostrovia.
Is it good when...
This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Chad is back after the holiday. I have been thrilled to be with you. I will just cover a couple more silly things here because, well, that's things that I like to cover. But before I get to those, I want to talk about one other viral story that's in the news. A black woman from Minnesota was on a Delta Airlines flight when she said a white woman started to harass her. I guess the debate came because of a back and forth over Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. The white female passenger putting on a mask that said Blue Lives Matter and then trying to create a conversation that might have not been one that the black woman wanted to have. I think that there certainly sounds, by the description given by this woman and by other passengers on the plane, like this was, I guess, pretty close to harassment. I guess the back and forth included a line like the life of an officer exists, but there's no such thing as blue life, and that statement is nothing but a rebuttal of the fact that Black Lives Matter has been disregarded time and time again. This is after the white female passenger kept trying to create a conversation by saying things like, I support blue lives because I support our officers. I don't know that an airline on an airplane is the right spot to have a back and forth debate like that, just to back up, I guess, people who don't necessarily want to engage in those conversations in those moments. And I don't think you can really, go after it the way in which it sounds like this one passenger did. Delta Airlines came to the defense of the individual that would like all this to stop after passengers tried to help as well, offering to move either of the women to a different part of the plane. And apparently it's caused the woman who's being covered on a lot of the news places, the black woman by the name of Demetria Poe, to be quite happy with her airline experience and to say that she's really only going to be flying Delta moving forward. I will say this, like I've said things about the mask debate, about any of the debates that you want to. You can't force people to have them with you in public places. You can't start screaming and yelling. You should not go into any sort of grocery store. If they ask you to wear a mask and you say no, start yelling at whatever worker is asking you to do it, because these are not productive solutions to the problem we have. I want us to have conversations. I want society to be able to talk and figure out ways to fix problems, to get answers to questions, but it's not going to come through means like this. So it seems like Delta might have made the right decision in helping everybody out. This is the beginnings of this story, so I'm sure we'll get more information about it. There might even be video that I've yet to see that is out there as well. But they also have a note of apology that's been given to the passenger who felt that she was being harassed. And so that is a good move, by all means, as people try to do everything they can to just stay calm. I mean, I had a story earlier on about how places like Tel Aviv are confused, but it seems like drones are dropping pot all over the place. We got to have a version of that makes sense in our country. Some version, maybe a little, one of those little plastic bottles of liquor, and just drop it certain places and have people just take a big breather and calm down, because you don't need to harass and argue with people while you're flying on a plane. It's stressful enough, especially in times like these. All right. The coronavirus pandemic apparently has helped us all eat much healthier. We are not only buying healthy foods and boosting our immunities through those kind of decisions, but we are apparently consuming better products on a whole as Americans for the first time in a long time. 77% of consumers say they want to do more to increase their health habits in the future after a health scare as big as the coronavirus pandemic, and obviously one that's been more than just a scare in a lot of places, and one that's taken life and done all the different things that have happened as far as the social distancing, the quarantine. So if I guess another silver lining in all this is we as Americans, people who are often compared to other countries as having atrociously bad diets, wind up with better diets, that's pretty great. 92% of people asked said they would like to find a way to put more plants, more proteins that have value, more just food products that are good for you inside their bodies on a daily basis. This to me is very good news. I found this tremendously funny. Here is audio as far as just responding a little bit more to the Nancy Pelosi mask gate that exists of several times in which Nancy said on TV that you should wear a mask. See if I can get this audio to play for you real quick so that we can hear exactly what Nancy has been saying as many times as she's been saying it.
For violating the mandatory mask order.
The hair salon owner who opened up her store has been jailed.
Must wear your mask. Wear the mask. This is the president who doesn't want to wear a mask. No one is above the law.
Except maybe Nancy Pelosi. I love it. I love the way in which this video has been edited and shared on social media.
Nancy Pelosi was seen not wearing a face mask at a San Francisco hair salon.
Day before, Pelosi was saying that those people who don't wear masks, who don't follow rules, are bad people.
Not wearing a mask and having haircuts indoors against the rules there.
Be an example to the country and wear the mask.
Nancy Pelosi appears to have violated.
I'm a big believer in wearing the mask.
Next time, Madam Speaker, why don't you see if someone will come to your house?
You must wear your mask. Wear masks at all times.
Rules for thee, not for me.
And to blame others. Leaders take responsibility.
Oh, that's my favorite line. This is going to go viral. It's going to be all over the internet. To take responsibility. Leaders do not blame others. Leaders do not reference, some sort of a mission, some sort of sabotage, some sort of fix that's in to try to get me. These are all the things that leaders don't do, Nancy. These are all the things that the enemy, President Donald Trump, has done time and again that you are never, ever going to do. You're not going to get in front of reporters and say things like there are some details I can't tell you of some stuff going on and how this was a gotcha, it was a trap. You chose to go to a salon. You chose to get a blowout this week. You chose to criticize, to pretty much circumvent everything you've said, to utterly demonstrate the two-facedness and the advice you give and the life you live. And now the internet has put it all together in the best of ways. Let me give it a little bit more.
So I take responsibility for falling for a setup.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi claims she was set up.
So the Speaker of the House is blaming the salon after she didn't wear a mask indoors.
And now she's having lawyers get involved to dox this poor salon owner who has been shut down for 6 months.
We haven't worked. We have no income. Since this happened, I have received nothing but hate, text messages, death threats. They're going to burn my hair salon down.
The America that Nancy Pelosi wants to see, an America in which she says things, you listen to them, you do them, and then she doesn't have to do them herself. And if people get in trouble for it, she blames them, not her. Every criticism she's ever had about the president should be called into question, even if it was a legitimate one, because it's not necessarily true anymore that she doesn't also do those things that she might be accusing the president of doing, even if he hasn't been doing them. I mean, it's just crazy. All the different moments, and there's so many more. But I thank the internet for being the internet. One other quick story I want to throw out there. This goes back to maybe a world of more adult news. Jane Fonda was recently asked if she had any regrets about her younger years. And I guess one of her biggest regrets in an interview was not having a intimate experience with Marvin Gaye. That is right. I guess she said one of the biggest regrets she's ever had is not taking an opportunity with that singer to maybe, get to know each other just a tad bit better. Then she said, I read apparently that I had a picture on his refrigerator. I didn't find that out until years later, after, unfortunately, he had passed away. Apparently, if Jane had known how Marvin felt, that the two of them, I mean, this is weird. This is like the second or third time that I've seen a celebrity make mention of the fact that in their younger years, they wish they had been a little bit more active in the scenes of romance in the romantic worlds. Jane Fonda apparently not beyond that, saying that there's just that one person that she regrets not getting to know better. She also said, I guess, that at one time there were other people that might have come on to her that maybe she had not been as interested in. Tom Hayden is one of the names mentioned there. He was married. She was married, obviously, to that politician at the time. But it's, oh, man, this is something else. There's so many things going on in the world, and yet this is probably fun and entertaining to some. They were married in 1970, by the way, Tom and Jane, so maybe that's part of the reason why the Marvin thing didn't wind up working out the way that maybe everybody had hoped. Sexual Healing came out in 1982, just as a note, because it's mentioned in this People article. Man, oh man, Jane Fonda taking over the news cycle for a day, or at least trying to, with a headline like that. We'll see if it works, because obviously the headlines of the day almost always involve the president, and you can't get in there, but Jane's doing the best job. That's not a, I gotta go. Chad Benson Show, Craig Collins filled in.
This is the Chad Benson Show.